Hey everyone, and welcome to the Babylon Chronicles, a podcast dedicated to taking a look at the inner workings, discussions, and shenanigans involved with making one of the world's most powerful, beautiful, simple, and open web rendering platforms, Babylon.js. My name is Jason Carter, also known as Pirate JC. I'm joined as always by my co-host, the creator and founder of Babylon.js, Mr. David Katui, or Delta Kosh in the Babylon world. Hey, David.
Hey. First time you tripped, right?
It's I didn't quite get it. I tripped over the intro just a little bit there. Yeah.
I don't know if it's a good sign.
It's Imperfect Friday. Let's call it that. It's Imperfect Friday.
I agree.
We may have a special guest joining us mid-podcast. Mr. Raanan Weber will be back.
Look at that.
Look at that.
That
was totally unscripted. That was magic. I was just saying we may have Raanan join us mid-stream here.
And then you appeared.
Hi.
And then you were there. Just like that. Actually, truthfully, folks, that wasn't a setup. We actually were expecting him much later, and he just popped in perfect timing. So, Raanan, welcome to the podcast. You, of course, are not a stranger to the podcast. I am doing something very special today. Neither of these two gentlemen know exactly what it is that we're going to be talking about. I scheduled an impromptu podcast. And I want us to dive deep into a topic that I know we're all very passionate about. I want to caveat that everything that we're going to discuss is the opinions of us only. We are not representing any companies that we may work for. Just that we are a group of people passionate about the computer graphics world and the technology world. And there's something that I really want to just open up to discussion because I think it's a super interesting one. So, gentlemen, I want us to discuss the philosophical implications of generative AI.
Oh my gosh, I was seeing it coming like...
So prepare yourselves because I know we have a lot I know we have a lot to talk about. So the reason for the timing of throwing this up pretty quickly is OpenAI, of course, one of the companies out there, organizations that's out there that's leading research in AI development around generative AI. Yesterday, released their latest model to the world, or at least...
Did they release it? I
guess I should say they announced it. Yes, they announced it. Yeah, and it's under private release. It's called Sora, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, and it is a text-to-video AI generative model. Now, it is not the first
but it's the most impressive by a quantum leap.
It is definitely, quantum leap might even be an understatement. I think to frame this up, everything that has kind of been released in the white paper world, Raanan follows generative AI development very, very closely, keeps us apprised of stuff. Everything that we've seen to date in this space, in the text-to-video space, has been interesting. But definitely, I think the word we would use is unstable. Is that fair, Raanan?
Unstable, very much.
Unpolished, I would say, yes.
Yeah. And Sora, which was released yesterday, has come out, and you're suddenly seeing example videos where things are quite alarmingly good.
And you use the word wisely. Alarmingly good is exactly how I would put it. It's
exactly
a bit scary.
Exactly. So here's my first question to you guys. And I want your, again, personal reflections here from some human beings, not reflections of any companies we work for. I would love to hear your thoughts on forget video for 1 second. What is generative AI doing for humanity? The ability for me to generate an image or generate a video or generate an essay.
Music, a sound, a text.
What is it doing for humanity? Let's start there. David, you want to go first?
Okay. Well, maybe disclaimer on top of the disclaimer. So we all work for Microsoft first, which is extremely engaged in AI, right? Yeah. But again, it will be my answer. My true self, I am an artist, right? I can say that now. I'm pretty proud of being able to say that because it took me some time.
You are not just an artist. Let me do a little plug and play
here.
For
I published my second book very recently.
It is absolutely gorgeous. Check it out, people. I
can't order it in Germany, David. Let me complain, please.
No, you can from France. If you go to France, you can.
Really?
Amazon.fr, you can deliver in Germany. Yes, sorry about that. Okay. But it will be the French version. You can order in Amazon.com and get it to Germany. Sorry.
Delivered from the US. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, that's a very good question for everyone who wants to buy.
But you are an artist. You are absolutely right. You
So
can
I
call
can say
yourself
that
an
now.
artist. A published artist.
The thing is, I saw AI in a very different way than most of the other artists, because I do not live out of my art, right? So I do art as a leisure.
You don't make a living off of it.
Correct, right? Yeah. As a passion. It's my passion. So yes, if people can do AI, I was working sometime, and working as the sense as I got paid by several D&D parties to paint their character, like fighting a dragon or stuff like that. I did that not for the money, but for the recognition that people were willing to pay for my art, which for me was something very important. I don't care that much about the money because, again, I have a stable job on the side, right? Okay. Yeah. I mean, not on the side, gosh. Yeah. I have a stable job, right?
And on the side, what you're saying is that the fact that people valued your art enough to pay you anything,
whatever
could have
the
been a quarter.
Was not a quarter. And now all of these people, they are not willing to pay me anything, right? Because they can generate that for them. So I see that as a two-edged sword. Of course, the first edge is these people who may not have been able to get a picture of the character the way they want, or tell a story they were not able to tell because they don't have artistic skills, would not have paid an artist because they don't have the money for that, right? So it's a new world for them, right? And who am I to say no to that? Yeah. But the other side of the house is I am also living in a artistic community a lot, right? The people where, so I learn art mostly by going on an online school, right? And so I keep having these people in my friends, and most of them, the vast majority, are not hobbyists. They are artists who want to get paid for their art. Yeah. And what we are seeing right now is generative AI removing that from them, right? So they don't get the money that could have get. Yeah. So there is a discussion to have on, okay, but the people who are getting generative AI right now may not have been able to pay you anyway, right? So it's a net plus. We can see that as a net plus. These people will not have been able to give you money anyway, right? So it's a net plus. Right. And you can see some greedy corporation. We heard about that across many times, where they say, hey, you know what? I'm okay with the so-so quality of the images generated, right? And I won't pay you even if I could. So it's this double-edged sword. It's super complicated. The same way when the nuclear technology was invented, right? We were able to power, I mean, I'm from France. 90% of French electricity comes from atomic power plant.
Oh, French has electricity now.
Yeah, right. Very recently.
Yeah.
It's like Nebraska, you know. But we also got the A bomb, right? And the H bomb. And so
you're hitting on something very, very important. And when we talk about the philosophical implications, I think it's really important to acknowledge both what's good and exciting and what's bad. Yes. And the truth is that there are pros and cons to both. And I think a lot of times, certainly right now in the media loves to sensationalize this conversation a lot, either with, you know, look how amazing everything is, or look, the world's going to come to an end. And the reality is there's truth in both of those perspectives.
And I see something, and I want to insist very much on that. I see big corporations, Microsoft included, NVIDIA, who are working on a sort of a watermarking system. The point is, I don't have any problem with generative AI, right? If I know that the image was generated by an AI, it's fine. It's exactly like organic food, right? For people who cannot afford food, having less expensive food with maybe some shortcuts, but at least you get food, it's fine, right? But I want to know that this is not organic, right? So I can decide, I'm okay to pay for the quality.
But it's your decision. You're informed to make the decision.
You are informed. You are making your decision. So if a company decides to go with generative AI and build their marketing or their game on a generative AI, I just want to know it. And as a consumer, I can decide if I support that or not, right? The problem we have right now, it's all mixed up. Like people pretend they are artists, they are just using a generative AI. And so it's mixing and having issues with people who wants to make a living out of it, right? Microsoft, NVIDIA, and other company, we are betting on having a content, what's the name, CR? I can't remember what is the R again, but it's a watermark that you cannot really remove. It's cryptographically ingrained into the image, right?
Yeah.
So any system can detect it. And
Yeah.
Facebook, Meta, and all of these people are okay to say, okay, when you drop an image, if there is a CR on it, we will display somewhere a tiny label that say AI generated. So you cannot pretend to be an artist if you are just prompting.
Yeah, that's well said. Raanan, I want to move to you real quick. One thing that's been really compelling in this conversation that we've had in the past is actually an insight into German culture. And I think there's definitely a culture there that's a little stronger around privacy, around a little bit of wariness of new technology, particularly that can take away from humans and human rights and stuff like that. I know we've talked a lot about this. I'd just love to hear your take on generative AI, what's good for humanity, what are you nervous about? Yeah, go.
And by the way, caveat,
about?
disclaimer for Raanan, you are also a musician and a producer. You produce music, right? So you are also in the artistic
a creator for sure, absolutely. Yeah.
And I am and being a musician, I'm always very, very excited to see how advanced those generative models are for music as well. I love seeing that, but when I see it and I see how advanced it is, I always think that's dangerous for new artists. I always think it's the new ones who haven't joined yet, haven't jumped on the bandwagon of being an artist that are going to suffer from this. That's my general thought about all of those models. So existing artists will continue producing art. I'm very much sure about that. But new artists might be discouraged to even start trying because it's so easy and so simple to just go in. There was this website that generates songs for you, right? It's a joke. It's a 40 seconds joke song, but in 2 or 3 years, we might be able to really produce a song with text and everything. You know, the generative AI can generate everything for you. So there is implication for I always say juniors. So people who haven't started yet.
But if we know that the music, it's a question for you, right? If you know that the music you are listening right now was AI generated, and it will be for you a way to sort it out, right? Maybe I'm interested, maybe I'm not. Maybe I can add the value. What I like with artists, they can see AI as a tool, right? First. And two, I feel like, again, when I see some painting from some artist, I feel like it's just more than the image. It's what the artist put in it, right? Like what I'm doing when I'm painting, I am dumping myself into the image, right? Like, and that has a value as long as I know it's not an AI. You get what I mean? I guess it's the same for music, right?
Yeah,
it's totally the same. So I would use. I'm not currently producing anything, but I would use those tools to help me maybe get to a certain point a bit faster. I would probably use it just like we're using Copilot when we're developing. You know, we're not telling Copilot, "Hey, develop this class for me," but it's very much helpful that it does things for you.
You're touching on a very, very interesting one now, because on one hand, I very much appreciate your perspective of what about a new musician? Is a new musician going to be scared away because
probably a bit, of course.
But at the other hand, would a new musician say, or I have a bunch of new tools that can help me get there faster? One of them, it was a very, not to overly emphasize the brilliance of Twitter, so forgive me, but there was one tweet in particular that was emerged right as ChatGPT was really becoming super popular. What was it? November of 2022, I believe. There's a particular thing said, your software development job will not be taken over by AI. Your software development job will be taken over by a software developer using AI.
Who's using AI?
Yes. And there's something provocative in that thought, right? I can't remember who said it. If I would give them credit. But truthfully, would a new artist, musician, image creator, now with Sora, a new filmmaker, would they come into this next world, the next 10 years, with new tools to help them get there faster or better? Or now you might argue just typing in text and then creating a video and then trying to get it into a movie theater is not going to be a revolutionary world. But what about as a tool set to help you along the means of creating your art?
I can challenge that. If your story is so good, but you don't have the skill or the means to produce a video, I see that as an artistic creation where you are using the same way I use Photoshop, right? In Photoshop, there is a tool that I use all the time, right?
Yeah.
It's the Liquify, and that could be seen as cheating somehow, right? You can't do that on a real painting. You cannot
cheating.
Yeah. You're right.
He didn't say
but actually,
what he thought he said.
both works.
That word is tough for French.
Cheating, yes, because in the real painting you cannot really move your pixel around and change the face. Sometimes I struggle to paint face, so what I do a first pass and then I liquify it, so I rearrange it so it looks better. That could be seen as cheating. But for me it's a tool, right? So I guess if you move that forward for an artist to generate maybe the base or something and then overpaint it to make it the way you want, or for someone who has a fantastic story in mind but not the means to create the video, isn't that just a tool?
Yeah, that's well said.
I had an interesting conversation with Seb and Gary from our team, actually. What I said, I threw a very provocative idea, and I said, in 10 years, AI will replace us. I just simply said that. And I said, I don't see that as a bad thing or a good thing. I'm just saying that factual, I think that. And eventually we got to a point, I said juniors before, I asked, what's the point? How can you encourage your kids? I'm sorry for taking it down like that. Can you encourage your kids to go to university and learn something when there is a model that can do that and do what they would study for 4 years? And my answer to myself was that eventually all of those will learn to use those tools and will just simply make things that are currently impossible that we can't
agree
do.
100%. Yes,
so we will jump. We as maybe humankind, or I was talking about developers, but I think everyone, artists and anyone who's using it, they would jump to a level. So suddenly the level that we are at right now, the code quality or the artist quality, it will be like double, triple. So you will be expected to deliver something so good because you have those tools, but you will still need to provide your input.
So you're right. Let me phrase that back to you just so I understand. So you're saying if there's an influx of people who are creating, because there's a whole bunch of tools that allow them to do that, then what it takes to there'll be so much more content that what it takes to stand out in that content will have to be excellent beyond the level we recognize today.
Exactly. So the standard will not be the current. So you see David's paintings, right? And I look at them and I say, I will never be able to do that. I know that I can't. I know but with generative AI, I can get to that level, let's say, roughly, maybe. But David can use generative AI and get to a level that I will never be able to do without knowing what I'm doing. And that's
well said.
I think this is where we're going to.
What I try to say here, it happened already in the developer world. Who is writing assembly code today? Literally. That was 20 years ago, all the developers were writing assembly code, every of them. And if we have told them, and you know what, to print a string, it's gonna just be one instruction. And we're like, you're kidding me, right? That does not make any sense. I was an Commodore Amiga developer, so it was assembly 68000. I just manipulated bits and moving them from registry to registry. So writing text was a freaking nightmare. 20 years later, I can write 3D text rotating with shiny shaders with one line of code in Babylon.js. I'm still a developer. What I can do right now is just 20x time bigger than what I was doing in the past. I see, at least for developer, AI has exactly that. We move the needle a level above that. And what I was able, like today, to create an application, it takes me time because I need to start the UI and everything. What if I just say, okay, now I'm going to focus on the higher level of that? As you said, building a fantastic application that would have been impossible for me to build 10 years ago. For artistic approach, I have a caveat though, because I think there is a part of humanity that exists in artistic creations. I can tell you as of today, maybe I won't in the future, but I can tell you with just a glimpse if an image was generated by AI or not. There is a signature on all the images. I feel it. Right? It's not always easy to explain. It's a feeling, the way the color are, the way. It's not easy to say. I feel there.
Here's what's
something
funny.
is missing.
Here's what's funny.
Maybe it's gonna change.
with a trained eye, you can sense this. You can see
I
it.
see it.
Maybe can't put words to it, but you can see it. But you've also had people accuse you of your art being AI generated. And that's fascinating too, because
the last 10 paintings, I keep all my intermediate steps. Because when I share my paintings on some forums, people are like, yeah, sure. What was the prompt? Literally, that's the answer. And so I tell, no, here is a tiny video. I share that on Instagram where, you see me sketching and then I color and everything, and I have intermediate steps. One guy, I shared with him my PSD because he was like, no, fuck you. That's not true. I see that as a compliment somehow, but it's also very painful. And I'm not making a living out of it. Right. Think about your commissioner. He asks you to paint something and say, no, that was made by AI. I won't pay you.
Yeah. This is a super fascinating one. I'll weigh in just very briefly on kind of the pros and cons and share a personal story. I grew up as a kid with a really big imagination, lots of make-believe and play for me. Creating stories in my head was a huge part of my childhood. I was drawn very early to animation as a way, a very visually expressive way to convey storytelling. And so I have tried, and I'm not exaggerating, I've taken classes, I have studied, I've done countless tutorials to learn how to try and paint or draw. There is something that I cannot get the images that are in my head to come out through my hands. And a lot of people might say, if you're a trained artist, well, you just haven't tried hard enough, or you haven't taken enough. Believe me, I've taken a lot of coursework in my life to try and do that. I wanted to be a Disney animator. I don't have that skill. When DALL-E first emerged to me, and I won't say I cried, but I certainly had a very emotional experience of suddenly the world has been projected into people like me who don't have a means of getting what's up here, but we want to express that to the world. We want to create that and share that with the world. We don't have a means of doing that. Suddenly there's a tool for it. And so for me personally, I have countless images in my head, and being able to describe them with text, and I can describe prompts that are, quite verbose in nature. Now, is it exactly what I see? No. And that brings us perhaps to the next question, which is, what is going to be the interactive conversation with generative AI beyond the transaction?
It will happen. You will be able to say, no, change. I mean, I can already do that with Copilot, where I can highlight an object and say, make it different, right?
Right, exactly.
And to the initial comment I was making, you were not planning by any way to commission an artist to do that.
Never.
Right.
I don't.
So that's the bright side. You are empowered, whereas you were not.
Correct. The act of sharing the images in my head is a personal thing. It's me just wanting to say, hey, I have this, I believe my imagination is fun, and I want to share that with my son or my daughters, or, or my wife, whatever. And I lacked the ability to do that. Now, suddenly there is a mechanism, though imperfect. And for me, I mean, chasing that for 4 decades, to want to be able to do this and to not be able to was honestly I reached a point in my life where I was just like, well, I guess I will never be able to do that. And so, without being too hyperbolic, the idea of text to image generation in particular, videos, another one we should get into, but image generation for me is like this. I've been granted something when I felt like I had a bit of a disability.
It's a gift.
Frankly, is kind of how it felt. It feels like a gift. Now, at the same time, I am deeply concerned that this thing that provides so much value to me, all these people who have studied this, who have developed an expertise for this, who half of them, well, let's say that whole world is struggling emotionally with what to do right now.
Of course, right? Because it's still the wild west.
Correct.
Right? It's still...
And so I have a deep degree of empathy for the anxiety. While I'm experiencing joy, a bunch of other people are experiencing anxiety and
despair.
And that to me is something, again, very philosophically, I wrestle with. Is it okay for me to find joy in a thing that brings so many other people angst and anxiety. And that's a hard one. I wrestle with that. And that, to me, is the crux of generative AI right now.
And that's why it's so
that was the same
divisive.
The same when computer jumped into all of those arts. It was the same. People were saying you're using Photoshop, you're not you're not painting, you're not an artist.
It's still a bit the case in some forums. Like, you are using Photoshop, you are not an artist, you are just a mouse clicker.
Yeah.
But now you're even worse, right? Now you're writing a prompt and then writing a prompt to change this prompt, and
we just need to make sure that the industry comes along with a solution to separate and have a clear message. This is AI generative, you deal with it. This is human-made, you deal with it. I guess that will be a first part of the
Let me ask you this, somewhat related. Would you guys kind of subscribe to the camp of an AI generated kind of creation should be able to be copyrighted or not? Which category would you fall into there?
I would say no, personally. I think that's part of the human side.
So something that is copyrighted is reserved for something that was crafted by humans.
Yeah, the main problem I'm facing is that I know at Microsoft we are very cautious with that, but some people like Midjourney, for instance, I know they train their AI on stuff where they do not have the copyright, right?
Yeah.
So it would be complicated for me to accept that you can copyright something that was built on not respecting the copyright, right? That sounds like
now, would you?
We said that we have an open source project that you can take and just make a project and copyright this project, right?
And sell it.
Yes, but it's us allowing that.
That's
right?
because we agreed to that.
We agreed with that. Like, if all the artists were saying yes, train your AI on my image, no problem.
Okay, so I type in text and I get an image, and I can't copyright that. Raanan, would you subscribe to that same camp?
Yes, very much.
But
it gets to a gray area where
it's okay. No, I agree. It's great. Yeah.
Well, keep going. Keep talking. Say more.
So the minute you put your input into this image that you just created a blank canvas, let's say, with this image, and now you're working on this blank canvas and you put your input. This is copyrightable. And again,
it depends.
I always take Copilot for that. I sometimes Copilot writes an entire function for me, right?
Yeah.
But it's still my code.
I love this because I think this is where, again, I'm expressing my personal opinion. I think this is where we're headed, right? Right now, text, get an image. No, that's not a machine made that. You had no part in that. Okay, sure. I can maybe subscribe to that camp. But the moment that this becomes interactive, my greatest example of this, the one that I think is doing this the best at the moment, is probably Leonardo AI. Encourage people to go check that out. You can create an image. You can in paint and out paint, which is the industry terms to say kind of paint over it and ask prompts to do different things. You can add colors to it. You can move the canvas so you can extend the image, giving it different prompts. That act, for me, emotionally, sharing my experience, is very creative. It's very expressive. The end result is Jason's expression having used tools.
Agree, as long as the tools are built, I would say eco-friendly, but that's not the word I'm looking for. Like
with permission, they were trained.
As long as they are not built. I mean, I cannot validate something that was stolen, right? As long as it's not stolen, or Justice say no, it's fine because it was fair use. It's still something we need to because people can say, hey, yes, it learned the same way I learn, like by watching. I'm could be fine with that as long as it's recognized this way. It's fair use. But if it was not fair use and it was just pumping everything and stealing everything, I just need someone to say, okay, as of now, justice and laws say it's fine because it was fair use or not. After that, I can have my opinion, right? In the meantime, so far, it's so gray, as Raanan mentioned, that I don't know. I absolutely agree with what you said, right? The AI is a tool, no problem on that. As long as the tool was not using some stolen values, I'm fine.
Fair. Totally fair.
Have you seen the integration that Adobe made? How in Photoshop?
Yes.
It's amazing. I know
my wife. It's amazing, and by the way,
her pictures sometimes.
They apply the content stuff, so it was built by AI. No one can.
Yeah, for sure.
And they use only copyrighted material,
correct.
so that they are approved to use. And it's actually amazing how well integrated it is in the tool and how simple it is to just make light adjustments. So instead, it's something that will take you an hour now to remove maybe, or to create a different background. It's much simpler, and I find that very nice.
No, it's nice. And you're right. It's well sourced, because they were using only stuff they were having a copyright on. So for that, I'm fine.
Yeah. Okay, let me turn us to one other subject that's also equally as deep. And by the way, again, I just want to emphasize we're sharing just our own personal perspectives. This is a conversation amongst friends here. The criminal justice system is...
Wow, you go hard already, right?
Wow, already, we're going big. The criminal justice system, whether you believe in it or not, is largely prioritizes visual elements as scientific evidence in court cases. Okay.
Yes.
We are in a world, and we'll start with images, but actually I think Sora, and this is where Sora comes in, if you can have a system that can create incredibly compelling video, what does that mean for a criminal justice system that places so much emphasis on visual evidence?
Again, I hope the cryptographic system to watermark images will be robust, right? Because that's going to be... I mean, it happened in the US, right? There was a fake video about Biden asking people to not go to vote, right? Like, it's already happening. And that was not the quality of what you can do with Sora. So, I am super anxious.
Yeah. So David is the hopeful, and the German is shaking his head here, saying no.
I'll tell you what a small anecdote. For a long time, the music industry have tried to create some form of a DRM inside the music, so it wouldn't be downloadable, right? So they tried everything, and eventually, the minute it's digital and the minute it's out there, you can just remove it. You can just remove it. There was a company who embedded frequencies inside the music, right? So that they can be read. It was cracked rather simply. If someone wants to remove this copyright, this information, they will remove it. I, as a layman, I will not be able to do that from a video, for example, or from an image. I have no idea how to. But if someone really wants to, as long the minute it's digital and it's out there, someone can do that. And I think
we can't use that as a proof anymore.
And we can't use images, right?
And so
it's very hard to believe. It's a system of trust. So we move into a system of trust. 100 years ago, if some trusted newspaper would write something crazy,
it was
you would still believe that, right? Because the newspaper that you trust and you know in your heart or head that it's true, you would trust it. And it's the same thing now with those images, and we see a lot of them. I'm not going to get into very specifics, but.
People say we are in the post-truth era because you cannot believe anything.
There was
voices can be imitated. The minute voices can be imitated, you can just create a conversation between two people and just say, "Here, he said that," and then go prove yourself that you didn't do it.
Yeah. So the idea of a jury of peers. I'm sorry, I know this is probably a little bit specific perhaps to the U.S. justice system here, but if you do live in a country where you have a trial by jury of your peers, largely it's their judgment to determine, what are the facts of the case and what do they say. In that system, there's a very compelling question of, do you trust your peers to be educated enough to even ask the question of whether video evidence is AI generated or not?
And even I don't even trust experts, because Raanan is right. I was when I was young, I was not able to buy games, so I was in the Juarez a bit, like not too much, right? It's okay, but whatever protection the industry came with, Raanan is right. 10 hours later, someone found a way to crack it.
Absolutely.
And that was just a minimum motivation. Think about someone who is super powerful and he may go to jail. He will be, or she will be, extremely motivated to get the data you need, right? Or she needs. And so I don't even trust the experts that will tell me, no, this image was not manipulated. How so? How do you know, right? What is the mathematical proof that it was not violated?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have an example, a real tangible, real world example where there's anxiety around the idea of such a stable generative video system. On the other hand, my degree is in filmmaking. I studied film for most of my educational career while trying to learn to draw. I ended up doing film. And we now have a tool that allows filmmakers to bring their vision to life far faster. And similar to how artists feel, there's some positive there. This is a new tool. On the Sora website, if everybody goes there, there's one thing, there's many different examples of videos that they've shown, which are incredibly stable. There's one that really pops out to me as eye-opening. It's a little furry Bigfoot character that's bending over a candle. And it's not perfect by any means, but for the average person who consumes a CG animated movie, a Disney, a Pixar, whatever type movie, when you look at this, I can see how it can easily be, you could build a movie around a technology like this.
Yeah.
It's really, really compelling. And the amount of hours that would go into creating something like that, let's call it the traditional way, wow. I mean, you could bring a vision to life far, far faster now. And I guess that brings us back perhaps, Raanan, to the topic that you brought up, which is we are probably on the precipice of a waterfall of content, the likes of which humanity has never seen before, whether that be images, video, written novels, anything.
Right.
And what is going to set something apart from the sea of noise or the sea
I have
of
an
content?
anecdote, but I guess Raanan wanted to say something.
No. What I wanted to say was, think about the conspiracy theory that the moon landing didn't happen.
Oh gosh, yes.
I'm sorry. I don't believe.
You call it a conspiracy
I don't
theory?
support this cause at all. But nowadays, if it would happen now, and someone would argue that this video is fake,
hey, they could.
They could.
Yeah, they could.
That's a good point.
Right? Of course, the technology didn't exist in the 60s, but
yeah, that's a good point.
Speaking of the waterfall of new content, I have an anecdote because to publish my first and second book, I first tried to go down the official path. I tried to find a publisher.
Yeah.
And so I pinged in France, I pinged 22 different publishers that I knew about. Okay. Out of 22 publishers, 20 replied to me that they were not accepting anymore any manuscript, anything, because of the influx of ChatGPT generated content they were getting. So I was not able to even talk with them because they had to close the door and say, sorry, right? It's a floodgate right now. Let me close that. We can't. Yeah. And so I ended up going down the self-publishing path, which is not a problem for me because I don't want again to live out of that. But if I was an inspiring artist or an inspiring author, it would have been terrible. I can't even go in because the door is closed because of all the generative content.
Meaning there's so much noise, your avenues are being shut down.
It's complicated to exist, right? Yeah. Even if your story or whatever is fantastic, because it's my case, you should buy my book. But yeah.
This brings up perhaps maybe one final thing before we depart. And there's, I mean, we could probably have hours and hours of discussion on this, but I'll bring it quickly to technical now. If it is true that we're on the precipice of a waterfall of content, what does that mean for storage? What YouTube has had this fascinating problem of for what, a decade and a half of so much content. I can't remember the statistics, but it's like, so much content is being added to YouTube per second that if you sat down to watch it today, it would take you 14 years to catch up, whatever. But you've heard the stories. Yes. What does that mean in a world where anyone can upload their creation to Imgur or to Reddit or to insert thing here to YouTube? I mean,
Instagram. I would love to see the Instagram statistic before and after generative AI. It should be.
Exactly. So, okay, you own some kind of service or hosting service or whatever. What has this done to your business? What does this mean? How do we deal with this? There's only so much hard drives in the world. So legit question to you guys, technically, how do you
Well, that's
solve
funny
this?
because I will have to answer that question at some point because I drive Babylon.js, but I also have a second hat. I drive Stream at Microsoft, which is the Microsoft YouTube for enterprise, right, to make it simple. And so as soon as Sora will be out and people will be able to generate video, they will also do that for the enterprise, like internal
Absolutely.
communication, whatever. So it will be so easier to do a video. Today, the ticket,
Absolutely.
the price to enter, it's quite high, right? You have to know a little bit or After Effects or Premiere or just record yourself, which could be just painful. With that, hey, generate a video where we celebrate the release of Foo, right? Boom, video done, send that to Stream. We're going to have to deal with that. And I don't have the answer yet. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's not only storage, right? It's storage and it's bandwidth.
Yeah.
And it's the searchability of this content, because suddenly you have so much more content that wants to be found eventually. People don't upload a movie to YouTube so people wouldn't watch it.
Yeah.
Right. So there is storage is. I wanted to say my first reaction was storage is cheap, right? But it's not. I know that it's relatively cheap compared to all of the other things that we will need to think about. Very specific to Babylon.js, we have the snippet server, and the snippet server is practically a database full of code.
Yeah.
And storing this database is nothing. It's not a lot. That's not our problem. Our problem is making it searchable. Our problem is publishing it correctly so people can consume it correctly. And that's the expensive thing, and that's the technical part that I think will need to be addressed, because the scaling abilities that they will need. So YouTube are probably experts in that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Because I have no idea what people are using YouTube. They have 10 hours movies in YouTube that I don't know why, but people are uploading those. But there is a technical scaling issue that we will need to address.
Yeah,
and this is something that every cloud provider, every personal website that accepts content will need to understand that and will need to deal with it.
And it's probably not a surprise that YouTube is doing right now a hunt against all the ad blockers, right? They were very much into that. I mean, that's not a surprise. Like, it's easy to forget how expensive it should be to maintain that kind of platform, right? And so they are trying to get money to do it. So
yeah, for sure. I think that's probably all we have time for today. I know we could talk about this for hours, and I appreciate you guys just humoring me in impromptu podcast recording. So much interesting stuff to discuss. I do want to say one thing. Would encourage anyone who's listening out there to engage in the conversation. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, please use the comment for that. Absolutely.
Yeah, if you're listening on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or via the forum, we'd love to hear from you. The only thing we'd ask is please be respectful and kind. This is a divisive topic for a lot of people. As we've discussed, there are both pros and cons, and we should respect both sides of that argument. And but that being said, we'd love to hear your thoughts and have the conversation continue after the show. Thank you guys for joining me. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye.